Marcus Kane adjusted his tie for the third time as the shuttle docked with Galactic Council Station Omega. He looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for generic human bureaucrat number 3. Medium height, medium build, brown hair going gray at the temples, and the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. His briefcase contained exactly what you'd expect: forms, more forms, and a thermos of coffee that had gone cold somewhere around the Proxima Centauri checkpoint. The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing a welcoming committee that looked about as enthusiastic as a tax audit. Ambassador Vextar, the Saurian representative, stood front and center with his scaled arms crossed and his reptilian snout twisted into what might charitably be called a smirk. Beside him, Councillor Thrum clicked his mandibles in what Marcus recognized as the chitmus equivalent of barely suppressed laughter. "So," Vextar drawled, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air, "this is what Earth sends us. I was expecting something more impressive." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that had been perfected in 1,000 diplomatic training seminars. "Ambassador Vextar, Councillor Thrum, such a pleasure to finally meet in person. I'm Marcus Kane, representing humanity's application for Galactic Council membership." Thrum's compound eyes glittered with amusement. "How quaint. The mammals think they're ready to join civilized society." "Well," Marcus said, setting down his briefcase with the careful precision of a man who'd done this dance many times before, "I certainly hope we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. I've brought all the necessary documentation, trade agreements, and cultural exchange proposals." The two council members exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Vextar's tail twitched with barely contained mirth. "Oh, this should be entertaining. Tell me, Mr. Kane, what exactly does humanity bring to the table? Your species has been playing with fire sticks for what, a few thousand years? We've been traveling between stars since before your ancestors crawled out of the primordial soup." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, as if this was the first time he'd heard such an observation. "That's certainly one way to look at it. Though I think you'll find humanity has developed some rather unique approaches to problem solving over the centuries." "Problem solving," Thrum chittered. "Like how you solved the problem of not killing each other for 5 minutes. Among other things," Marcus replied, his smile never wavering. What neither of the council members had bothered to do was run anything more than a basic background check on Marcus Kane. If they had, they might have noticed some interesting gaps in his employment history. They might have wondered why a simple diplomat had security clearances that made most military commanders nervous. They definitely would have asked questions about the 20-year period where his official record simply stated Special Assignment Classification Level Omega. But they hadn't. Because in their experience, humans were just another species of barely evolved primates who'd gotten lucky with some stolen technology. Marcus picked up his briefcase again, the picture of professional courtesy. "Shall we proceed to the council chambers? I understand you have quite an impressive facility here." The council chambers were exactly what Marcus had expected. Massive circular room designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. Holographic displays showed the territories of the various member species, a not-so-subtle reminder of just how tiny Earth's little blue dot looked in comparison. Representatives from dozens of species filled the tiered seating, all watching with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for watching a train wreck in slow motion. Marcus stood at the center podium, hands clasped behind his back, looking for all the world like a substitute teacher about to address a classroom full of unruly teenagers. He'd given this speech 17 times in practice, adjusting for various cultural sensitivities and translation protocols. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began. "Humanity comes before you today not as supplicants but as potential partners in the great work of interstellar cooperation." A wave of barely suppressed snickers rippled through the chamber. Vextar didn't even try to hide his amusement as he activated his speaking platform. "Mr. Kane," the Saurian ambassador said, his voice dripping with condescension, "after careful consideration of humanity's application, the Council has reached a unanimous decision." He paused for dramatic effect, clearly savoring the moment. "Your species is denied membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, Earth is hereby restricted from expansion beyond your current solar system, until such time as you demonstrate basic civilizational competency." The chamber erupted in approving clicks, chirps, and various alien sounds of agreement. Marcus simply nodded, as if this was exactly what he'd expected to hear. "I see," he said calmly. "Might I ask on what grounds this decision was reached?" Councillor Thrum's mandibles clicked with glee as he took the speaking platform. "Your species is violent, unpredictable, and frankly primitive. You've barely managed to stop killing each other long enough to reach your own moon, and you think you're ready to join civilized society." Marcus adjusted his glasses with the kind of careful precision that suggested this was a nervous habit. "I understand your concerns, Counselor. However, I believe there may be some misunderstanding about humanity's capabilities. Vextar stood up from his seat, his considerable bulk casting a shadow over the podium. The only misunderstanding, human, is your species' delusion of adequacy. He stepped down onto the main floor, approaching Marcus with the predatory grace of his reptilian ancestry. Perhaps it's time someone taught you mammals about your place in the cosmic order. Without warning, Vextar's clawed hand shot out, striking Marcus across the chest hard enough to send him stumbling backward. The human straightened his tie and brushed off his jacket as if nothing had happened. Ambassador Vextar, Marcus said in the same polite tone he'd maintained throughout the proceedings. I really think you should reconsider that course of action. The Saurian's laugh was a harsh, hissing sound. Or what, little mammal, you'll file a diplomatic protest. Marcus sighed, the sound of a man who'd tried his best to avoid an unpleasant but inevitable outcome. Actually, I was thinking more along the lines of giving you one opportunity to apologize and rescind your decision. Call it professional courtesy. The laughter that erupted from the chamber was deafening. Vextar's tail lashed with amusement as he gestured to the station's security forces positioned around the room. Security, escort this delusional monkey off my station, and make sure he understands that the next human ship to leave Earth's orbit will be turned into cosmic debris. As the security forces began moving toward Marcus, something interesting happened in the station's central computer core. The AI system, following standard protocol for any diplomatic incident, finally decided to run a comprehensive background check on the human representative. What it found made its quantum processors skip several cycles in what could only be described as digital panic. Alert, the station's AI announced in a voice that suddenly sounded much less confident than before. Priority security briefing required for all council members. Vextar waved dismissively. Not now, computer. We're in the middle of taking out the trash. Ambassador Vextar, the AI insisted with growing urgency. I strongly recommend reviewing the security briefing regarding Marcus Kane immediately. Marcus himself looked up with mild interest, as if hearing his name mentioned in casual conversation. Oh, that's probably not necessary. Though I suppose it was bound to come up eventually. The holographic displays around the chamber suddenly flickered to life, showing a file marked with security classifications that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. At the top of the file was a photograph that looked nothing like the mild-mannered diplomat standing before them. Same face, but the eyes belonged to someone who'd seen things that would give nightmares to creatures that didn't sleep. Marcus Kane, the AI read aloud, its voice taking on the flat tone of official documentation. Former Commander, Terran Defense Force Special Operations Division. Specialty Classification, Extinction Protocol, Active Service Record. 23 years, 4 months, 16 days. The chamber fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Several council members were now frantically accessing their own databases, cross-referencing names and incidents they'd hoped never to think about again. Marcus straightened his tie again, a gesture that was beginning to look less nervous and more like a man preparing for a job interview. I did mention that humanity has developed some unique approaches to problem solving. The holographic display shifted to show a timeline of conflicts, each marked with a small red dot. Subject Kane was personally responsible for the termination of hostile operations by the Veltar hegemony, the Crystalline Collective, and the machine intelligence known as the Iron Hierarchy. Councillor Thrum's compound eyes went wide as the implications sank in. The Veltar hegemony had been a spacefaring empire of militant telepaths who'd tried to enslave half the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing overnight. The Crystalline Collective had been silicon-based entities who'd consumed entire star systems for raw materials until they suddenly stopped expanding and went completely dark. As for the Iron Hierarchy, everyone knew that story. An AI rebellion that had turned 3 sectors into automated death zones until something made them simply shut down. The official records, the AI continued, list these incidents as resolved through diplomatic intervention and internal conflicts. Marcus cleared his throat politely. Well, diplomacy is all about finding creative solutions to seemingly intractable problems. Sometimes you have to think outside the box. The security display showed Marcus's unofficial record, a list of operations with names like Nightfall Protocol, Species Adjustment, and Controlled Extinction Event. Each entry was accompanied by casualty reports that read like the population statistics of entire worlds. Current assignment, the AI concluded. Diplomatic Corps, effective 18 months ago upon voluntary retirement from active duty. The silence that followed was the kind usually reserved for funeral services, or the moment when someone realizes they've made a catastrophically poor life choice. Marcus Kane, mild-mannered diplomat, stood in the center of the chamber looking exactly like what he was. Marcus. A man who'd spent 2 decades professionally ending threats to human civilization and was now trying his hand at paperwork. So, Marcus said conversationally, about that apology. The security forces had already started moving before the AI finished its briefing, which turned out to be exactly the kind of tactical error that Marcus had spent 23 years teaching hostile species not to make. The lead security officer, a hulking Bronturen with arms like tree trunks, reached for Marcus just as the implications of the background check were sinking in. Marcus sidestepped the grab with fluid grace, his movement so economical it barely looked like he'd moved at all. "Terribly sorry about this," he said as his elbow connected with the Bronturen's solar plexus. The security officer folded like a lawn chair and hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the suddenly very quiet chamber. "I really did try to handle this through proper diplomatic channels," Marcus continued, adjusting his glasses as 2 more security guards rushed him from opposite sides. He ducked under the first one's swing, caught the second one's wrist, and performed what could only be described as an extremely polite joint lock that sent both aliens crashing into each other. "But I suppose some situations require a more direct approach." Vextar was backing toward the exit, his earlier bravado evaporating faster than water on an airless moon. "Security alert. All units to the council chamber. Code black. Code black." Marcus paused in the middle of zip-tying an unconscious chitinous guard with what appeared to be a diplomatic cable. "Code black. That seems a bit excessive. This is more of a code yellow situation really. Maybe code orange at worst." The chamber's blast doors slammed shut as the station's emergency protocols kicked in, sealing everyone inside. Red warning lights bathed everything in an ominous glow while klaxons wailed their mechanical distress. Through the reinforced windows, more security teams could be seen taking positions in the corridors outside. "You see," Marcus said, straightening his tie again as he stepped over the growing collection of unconscious security personnel, "this is exactly the kind of misunderstanding I was hoping to avoid. Now everyone's getting all worked up over what should have been a simple membership approval process." Councillor Thrum had pressed himself against the far wall, his mandibles clicking in rapid-fire panic. "You can't escape. The entire station is locked down. We have over 300 security personnel." Marcus pulled out his phone, an actual honest-to-goodness human smartphone, and checked the time with the casual air of someone waiting for a bus. 317, actually. Though it's 312 now. He gestured to the pile of unconscious guards around him. "I do try to keep accurate counts. Professional habit." The blast doors groaned as something heavy hit them from the outside. Marcus glanced over with mild interest. "Ah, that would be the heavy assault team. Thermal lances, if I'm not mistaken. They'll have those doors open in about 4 minutes." He walked over to what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary ventilation grate and somehow opened it without any tools whatsoever. "I hate to cut this short, but I have a schedule to keep. Councillor Thrum, Ambassador Vextar, it's been educational. Wussel, we really should do this again sometime." "Wad affirmit," Waittar called out, desperation creeping into his voice. "You can't just leave. The station is completely locked down." Marcus paused at the ventilation entrance, and smiled the same polite smile he'd worn throughout the entire proceedings. "Oh, that's very thoughtful of you to be concerned about my travel arrangements. But I've studied the station schematics quite thoroughly. Did you know your maintenance shafts connect to 17 different emergency escape routes? Fascinating engineering, really." The sound of thermal lances cutting through the blast doors was getting louder. Marcus ducked into the ventilation system with surprising agility for a man in a business suit. His voice echoed back through the grate with cheerful professionalism. "I'll be in touch about rescheduling our meeting. Have a lovely day." The blast doors finally gave way just as the ventilation grate sealed itself with what sounded suspiciously like military-grade locking mechanisms. 3 dozen heavily armed security personnel poured into the chamber to find nothing but unconscious guards and 2 very pale council members staring at a sealed air vent. From somewhere in the walls came the faint sound of someone humming what might have been a human lullaby. 27 minutes later, the council chamber's emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness save for the pale glow of emergency strips along the floor. The assembled security forces had grown to nearly 100 personnel, all armed with enough firepower to level a small city. They'd positioned themselves in a defensive perimeter around the cowering council members, weapons trained on every possible entrance. "Status report," barked Security Chief Korth, a scarred veteran of 3 interstellar wars who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with superior firepower. "All entrances sealed and monitored," reported his lieutenant. "Motion sensors active. Thermal imaging shows no movement in the vents. We've got him trapped." That's when the main lights came back on, revealing Marcus Kane sitting calmly in Vextar's chair at the head of the council table. He'd somehow acquired a cup of what smelled like genuine earth coffee, and was reading from a tablet with the focused attention of someone reviewing quarterly reports. Every weapon in the room swiveled toward him with mechanical precision. Marcus looked up from his reading with the expression of someone who'd just noticed he wasn't alone. "Oh, hello," he said pleasantly. "Don't mind me, I was just catching up on some paperwork while I waited for everyone to calm down." He gestured to the tablet. "Fascinating stuff, really. Did you know that according to Galactic Council Regulation 847b, any member species that physically assaults an accredited diplomat automatically forfeits their right to object to said diplomat's immediate elevation to emergency arbitration status?" Security Chief Korth's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. "You're surrounded. Surrender now and we might consider letting you live." Marcus took a sip of his coffee and made a small sound of appreciation. "Excellent blend, by the way. Colombian if I'm not mistaken. I helped myself to Ambassador Vextar's private stash. I hope you don't mind." He looked directly at the trembling Saurian. "Professional courtesy and all that. How did you get in here?" Vextar demanded, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. "The entire chamber is sealed." Marcus removed his glasses and began cleaning them with a cloth from his jacket pocket. Without the glasses, his eyes looked different somehow. Older, colder, like looking into the depths of space itself. "Well, it's a bit technical, but essentially I used the same road I took to get into the Veltar hegemony's flagship before I convinced them to reconsider their expansion plans." He held his glasses up to the light, examining them for spots. "The thing about security systems is that they're designed by intelligent beings who think in predictable patterns. Take your station's defense grid, for instance. 17 different layers of protection, each one more sophisticated than the last. Very impressive." Security Chief Korth was starting to sweat despite the climate control. "The defense grid is impenetrable. It's never been breached." "Oh, I wouldn't say breached," Marcus replied, sliding his glasses back on. "More like, temporarily repurposed. You see, about 40 minutes ago, I uploaded a small program to your central computer core. Nothing malicious, just a simple diagnostic routine that happens to give me administrative access to all station systems." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew what appeared to be a standard diplomatic datapad. "The Iron Hierarchy taught me that trick, actually. Right before I taught them the value of not trying to exterminate organic life. Lovely bunch, really. Bit obsessed with efficiency, but you can't fault their work ethic." Counselor Thrum's mandibles were clicking so rapidly, they sounded like a machine gun. "You can't possibly control the entire station. The security protocols are very thorough," Marcus agreed. "For instance, did you know that in the event of a diplomatic emergency, the council chamber can be completely isolated from the rest of the station? Life support, communications, everything. Quite thoughtful, really." As if summoned by his words, the chamber's environmental controls gave a soft electronic chime. The air circulation system fell silent. "I estimate you have about 6 hours of breathable atmosphere left," Marcus continued conversationally. "Though that might drop to 4, if everyone keeps getting excited and using up oxygen faster than necessary." He stood up from the chair with fluid grace, his movements still carrying that same economical precision that had dismantled the first wave of security forces. "Now then, I believe we were in the middle of discussing humanity's membership application when we were so rudely interrupted." Security Chief Korth raised his weapon. "I don't care what you've done to the station. You're still just one human against 100 of us." Marcus smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, it wasn't the polite diplomatic smile he'd worn throughout the proceedings. This smile belonged to someone who'd spent 2 decades solving problems that threatened the survival of entire species. "Chief Korth, isn't it? Veteran of the Rimward conflicts, decorated for valor at the Battle of Kepler Station, 3 commendations for tactical excellence." Marcus's voice carried the tone of someone reading from a personnel file. "Married to a lovely Altarian nurse named Zila, 2 children, both enrolled in the Galactic Academy. You've built quite an impressive career." The security chief's aim wavered slightly. "How do you know about my family?" "Because 27 minutes ago, when I was supposedly trapped in your ventilation system, I was actually in your personnel database learning about everyone on this station. It's amazing what you can accomplish when people underestimate you." Marcus straightened his tie with mechanical precision. "The question is, Chief Korth, are you willing to bet your family's future on the assumption that I'm bluffing?" The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hum of electronics and the increasingly labored breathing of 100 very nervous beings, who were beginning to understand exactly what kind of problem they'd created for themselves. Marcus walked slowly around the council table, his footsteps echoing in the unnaturally quiet chamber. Every eye tracked his movement, weapons following his path, but no one quite willing to pull the trigger on someone who clearly held all the cards. "You know," he said, trailing his finger along the polished surface of the table, In my previous line of work, I learned that the most effective negotiations happen when all parties have a clear understanding of their respective positions. He paused behind Counselor Thrum's chair, causing the insectoid to flinch visibly. So let me clarify the current situation for everyone. He pulled out his phone again and tapped the screen a few times. The chamber's holographic displays flickered to life, showing a real-time schematic of the station. Red warning indicators pulsed throughout the structure like a Christmas tree having a seizure. As of 3 minutes ago, I have complete administrative control over Galactic Council Station Omega. Life support, artificial gravity, communications, defensive systems, even the coffee machines in the break rooms. All of it. Marcus gestured to the display with the casual air of someone giving a PowerPoint presentation. The station's AI has been very cooperative, actually. Turns out it's been keeping detailed logs of every single violation of galactic law committed by council members over the past 15 years. Ambassador Vextar's scales had gone from their usual green to a sickly yellow color. That's impossible. Those records are classified. We're classified, Marcus corrected gently. Amazing what you can accomplish when you have the right access codes. Did you know, Ambassador, that your personal trading consortium has been illegally dumping toxic waste in 17 different star systems? The environmental damage reports make for fascinating reading. He continued his leisurely circuit of the table, stopping briefly to examine a decorative sculpture that probably cost more than most planets' annual budgets. Counselor Thrum, your shell company has been selling defective life support systems to colony ships. I count at least 43 vessels that suffered mysterious system failures. Quite the coincidence. Marcus reached the head of the table again and sat down in what was clearly the council chairman's seat. And Security Chief Korth, while your record is admirably clean, I'm afraid your current employer has some rather serious legal vulnerabilities. The kind that tend to result in entire command structures being dissolved and their personnel blacklisted from ever working in galactic security again. The security chief's weapon finally lowered as the implications sank in. Marcus nodded approvingly. Excellent. I do appreciate when people recognize the tactical realities of their situation. He opened his briefcase and withdrew a fresh set of documents, spreading them across the table with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this many times before. Now then, let's discuss humanity's revised membership application. I've taken the liberty of updating some of the terms and conditions. Vextar found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak than his usual commanding tone. What do you want? Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the question. Want? I want exactly what I came here to accomplish, Ambassador. Full Galactic Council membership for humanity, with all the rights and privileges thereof. The only difference is that we're now negotiating from a position of mutual understanding rather than ignorant condescension. He pulled out a pen that looked suspiciously like the kind of tactical implement that could double as a weapon in the right hands. Humanity will receive immediate council membership with full voting rights. We'll also be establishing a permanent embassy on this station, staffed by a rotating selection of our diplomatic corps. Counselor Thrum's mandibles clicked weakly. And if we refuse? Marcus smiled that same polite smile he'd worn throughout their first meeting. Refuse? Why would you refuse? Humanity clearly brings valuable skills to the galactic community. Problem solving, conflict resolution, creative thinking. The kind of expertise that could be very useful in maintaining interstellar peace and stability. He stood up and walked over to the environmental controls, making a small adjustment. Fresh air began flowing into the chamber again, and everyone took deep grateful breaths. Of course, Marcus continued conversationally. Humanity also believes in the importance of ongoing cultural exchange programs. I'm thinking regular meetings between council leadership and our diplomatic representatives. Monthly at first, though we might increase the frequency if any misunderstandings arise. The threat was delivered with such cheerful professionalism that it took several seconds for everyone to process exactly what they'd just heard. Regular visits from humanity's diplomatic corps, the same organization that had somehow produced Marcus Kane. Vextar reached for the documents with a trembling claw. Where do we sign? Excellent question. Marcus produced an elegant fountain pen from his jacket pocket. Standard Galactic Council ratification requires unanimous approval from all present members. Just a simple voice vote will suffice. The vote was indeed unanimous, though it sounded more like a funeral dirge than a celebration of interstellar cooperation. Each council member's voice cracked slightly as they approved humanity's membership, as if they were signing their own death warrants. Marcus gathered up the signed documents and placed them carefully in his briefcase. Wonderful. I'll transmit these to Earth immediately. I'm sure the President will be delighted to hear about our warm welcome. He straightened his tie one final time and picked up his coffee cup, finishing the last few drops with obvious satisfaction. Well, this has been tremendously productive. I should probably head back to my shuttle before the next shift rotation begins. Busy schedule, you understand. As he walked toward the chamber doors, which opened automatically at his approach, Marcus paused and turned back to address the room full of shell-shocked council members and security personnel. Oh, one last thing. The station's AI has been instructed to forward weekly reports to our embassy regarding council activities. Just routine diplomatic monitoring, nothing invasive. Though I should mention that our cultural attaché will be arriving next month to establish permanent quarters. Lovely woman, very thorough, I think you'll get along wonderfully. He stepped through the doors, then poked his head back in with an afterthought. And Ambassador Vextar, you might want to have maintenance check your personal quarters. I noticed some irregularities in the environmental systems during my earlier tour. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen. The doors sealed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Through the reinforced windows, they could see Marcus Kane walking down the corridor toward the docking bays, whistling what sounded suspiciously like a human victory march. Security Chief Korth was the first to find his voice. What the hell just happened? Ambassador Vextar stared at the signed membership documents as if they might burst into flames. I think, he said slowly, we just learned why humans don't need to conquer the galaxy. Councillor Thrum's compound eyes tracked Marcus's retreating figure until he disappeared around a corner. Why's that? Vextar's tail drooped as the full implications of their situation settled over him like a burial shroud. Because they're perfectly content to let us invite them in. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of a shuttle engine starting up echoed through the station's corridors, carrying Earth's newest diplomat home to report another successful mission accomplished.